All right, so we are continuing our series, and we are going to be in Joshua chapter 6. So open up your Bibles to Joshua chapter 6, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and then Joshua. Yep, yep. When you get there, give me a yep, yep. Yep, yep. Joshua chapter 6. Does any remember what Shara finished on last week? Where were the Israelites when Shara finished talking last week? Yeah. Yeah, they just crossed the Jordan River. Great job. You get a starburst. They just crossed the Jordan River, and now they're camping right outside of Jericho. But before they crossed the Jordan River, Joshua was like, all right, we need some spies, some CIA spies. Anyone like spy movies? Except these spies didn't lose terribly like the CIA team did during tournament series. Awkward. At least we were close, okay? CIA was like 5th place, and there's only 4 teams, okay? Anyways, Joshua sent 2 spies out, and he said, go check out the promised land, and especially go check out Jericho. And Jericho was this like super fortress, right? It's just a bunch of walls. It's super hard to get into, and it's one of the best well-defended cities ever, right? And so the spies go out. They infiltrate Jericho, but they get found out. The king finds out that there's 2 Israelites in Jericho, and he goes to look for them. And there is this woman named Rahab who takes the 2 spies and she hides them. She hides them away. She's like, hey, I know who you guys are. I know who your God is. And I know what your God has done. Whoa. There it is. Sorry, the mic keeps falling. Look, it's down now, isn't it? So, it's a lost cause. Anyways, so Rahab hides the 2 Israelites. She's like, I know who you are. I know who your God is. And that's the God that I want to serve. I don't want to be on Jericho's side. I want to be on your side. Will you please spare me when you conquer Jericho? Because I know your God is going to deliver the city into your hands. And they're like, yes, you helped us. And if you promise not to rat us out and not tell your king where we are, then we will spare you when we conquer your city. He's like, get all of your family, get everyone you love, put them in your house, and tie a red cord on your window, a red ribbon, a red rope. And that's how we know that is the house of Rahab, and we're going to spare them. So they sneak out the window. They run all the way back to Joshua. Like, Joshua, we're back. We're ready. It's great out there, but there's this Jericho, and it's well fortified. It's insane. It's going to be really hard to get into. So they cross the Jordan, like Shara talked about. They get up there, and now we're in chapter 6. Are you guys ready? Real quick, though, before we get into chapter 6, I want to explain to you the fortitude of Jericho. That it wasn't just some normal like city that maybe had like a white picket fence or like a barbed wire fence. It had huge walls that went around the entire city. And it had not 1, not 3, but 2 walls back to back protecting the city of Jericho. There's a picture up here. So this is the walls that protected Jericho. You see those little guys on the bottom right? Those are the Israelites. And that first wall was 23 feet tall. And if you got past that first wall, you were on a slope. You're on an embankment. And what they would do is they would plaster the embankment so it would become super slippery. So if somehow you got over the first wall or took down the first wall, you had to climb up the slippery embankment, and they would just throw spears and arrows at you and just destroy you. Like, it was a fortress. It was really hard to get into. From the ground level, that second wall was almost 50 feet tall. So it was 50 feet of a wall that they had to get into. Not an easy task. So, we're actually going to jump in chapter 5, the last part of chapter 5, in verse 13. It says the fall of Jericho. You guys ready? It says, now, when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, are you for us or for our enemies? Neither, he replied, but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, what message does my Lord have for his servant? So scholars, people are a lot smarter than me, they believe that this was Jesus. This was Jesus before Jesus was even born. This was what they call a Christophany. Can you guys say Christophany? Christophany. This is just a, like, not Jesus in the flesh, but like the entity of Jesus before Jesus was even alive. This happens a few times in the Bible. And we keep going in verse 15. It says, the commander of the Lord's army replied, take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy. And Joshua did so. Does this ring a bell to anybody? Does this sound familiar? Besides Georgia, who's been here twice? Yes. Yes, the burning bush, right? When God spoke to Moses through the burning bush, it was God's presence, right? And he said, remove your sandals because this is holy ground. Great job, you get a starburst. Oh, sorry, that was a bad throw. So this is how we know that this is God. This is God's presence, his entity. This is Jesus. And we keep going in chapter 6 now. Ready? Verse 1. It says, now the gates of Jericho were securely barred because of the Israelites. No one went out and no one came in. So the city of Jericho has heard about God. They've heard about the Israelites, and they're scared. They're like, we don't want to open up to them. Like, we're rebelling against God. We don't like them, and we're terrified. So we're just going to bar up, close shop, close the gates. And Jericho actually had a freshwater spring inside the city. And they just finished the harvest, so they had like years worth of grains. So like, we're just going to close up, we're going to keep you out, and we're going to outlast you. Because you're not going to break through our walls. Our walls are crazy good. No one's ever broken into them before. We're just going to outlast you. We got food and we have water. We're going to last for years. That's how we're going to win this battle. Verse 2, then the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times, with the priests blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have the whole army give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse, and the army will go up, everyone straight in. So, God, or Jesus, this Christophany, is talking to Joshua, and he says, okay, this is what you have to do. You have to get all of your armies, get the priests, get the Ark of the Covenant, get your ram's horns, and on day 1, you're going to walk in a circle, saying nothing, being silent, but blowing the ram's horn. And then you're going to go home. 2nd day, do it again. 3rd day, do it again. 4th day, do it again. 5th day, do it again. 6th day, do it again. And then on the 7th day, you're going to do it 7 times. You're going to blow your trumpets, you're going to yell, and the walls are just going to collapse. And then you guys are going to be able to walk straight in. So Joshua is like, all right, let's do it. So he follows it. He gets all of his armies. Day 1, they do it. Day 2, they do the exact same thing, following Jesus' instructions to a T. 3rd day, they do it. They do it for 6 days. And on the 7th day, they do it 7 times, just as the Lord commanded. They blow the trumpets. They yell. We pick up in verse 20. You ready? Verse 20, it says, when the trumpet sounded, the army shouted, and the sound of the trumpet, when the men gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed. Uh-oh. Sorry, my beard is causing static. So everyone charged straight in, and they took the city. They devoted the city to the Lord and destroyed with the sword every living thing in it, men and women, young and old, cattle, sheep, and donkeys. So archaeologists have done thousands of digs on the city of Jericho, the destroyed city of Jericho today. And what they found is they found that the wall fell outwards. Normally when you conquer a city, normally when you attack a city, you break down their walls by doing what? You push them in, right? You cave them in like you're like a battering ram. You're not going to try and pull the wall down on top of you because then you kind of lose the war right away, right? So all other cities have their walls fallen in, but Jericho had their walls falling out. And see what happened is when the walls fell out, did you see how the walls, or the 2 walls were on a hill like this, right? The walls fell out, and it created a perfect ramp up into the city. Just this perfect stairway of rubble that the Israelites just walked in, and they just demolished. They killed everybody, right? And we skip down to verse 24. It says, then they burned the whole city and everything in it, But they put the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron into the treasury of the Lord's house. But Joshua spared Rahab the prostitute with her family and all who belonged to her, because she hid the men Joshua had sent as spies to Jericho, and she lives among the Israelites to this day. Verse 26, at that time Joshua pronounced this solemn oath, cursed before the Lord is the one who undertakes to rebuild this city, Jericho. At the cost of his firstborn son, he will lay its foundations. At the cost of his youngest son, he will set up its gates. So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame spread throughout the land. So, they win, right? They slaughter everyone. And if you're like me, or a rational person, you're probably like, oh, dang, like that's crazy. Like, God just killed everyone, the cattle, the sheep, the donkey. Like, this is kind of wild, right? Like, why would God do such a thing? You're like, oh, well, it's in the promised land, and that's the land that God promised, so that gives them the right. It's like, what? That doesn't make sense, right? But see, the city of Jericho isn't as innocent as one might think. The city of Jericho was actually a super sinful city. They were rebellious against God. They had very perverse religious ideals and traditions, and they would have temple prostitution, and they have a bunch of bad stuff, very sinful, very dark, very evil things that would happen within the city. It wasn't a good city. They weren't good people. And so, like, okay, well, maybe the Israelites can just, like, move past them and, like, set up camp, start a city, live in the promised land next to them, and just, like, coexist, right? That makes sense. But see, God knew that even though this city of Jericho, even though they were their own city, they were next door, they weren't living with the people of Jericho, he knew that their morals would corrupt his people. The city of Jericho would slowly pull the Israelites away from God because of their sin, because of their morals. No matter how small they were, no matter how far they were, if they were in that land, they would have taken over the Israelites. They would have corrupted the Israelites, and God knew that they had to be exterminated. They had to be taken out. And this reminds me of a story my friend Anthony told me. He's the high school pastor at the Ramona campus. One time he was at summer camp, right? And he was on a houseboat. Anyone ever been on a houseboat before? Super sweet with the slide on top, and you do the flippy flips off the top. Super fun, great time. And he was like, hey, being the great human being he is, he's like, I'm going to do something nice for everyone. He woke up early in the morning, and he made coffee for everyone. All the students, all the leaders, all the drivers, everybody. He's like, I'm going to make coffee for everyone. And anyone experience that, like, mid-camp funk? Maybe it's just the adults, but, like, mid-camp, you're like, I haven't slept in 4 days. I need coffee. So everyone's, like, excited, right? Like, yes, fresh batch of coffee. Everyone drinks the coffee. The entire camp drinks the coffee. And then an hour or two later, someone starts puking. And then someone starts pooping their pants. Diarrhea everywhere. And then someone starts doing both at the same time. Oh, that's the worst. Anyone puke and diarrhea at the same time? Whew. It's not fun. Yeah, don't be ashamed. Raise your hand. It's okay. And then another person, thank you, Kate. I appreciate the honesty. Another person started puking, and another person, and another person. And eventually the entire camp is sick. The entire camp is puking. The entire camp is pooping. It's just this mess. And everyone's confused. Like, what's going on? What happened? And Anthony realizes, he's like, oh my gosh, what have I done? When he made the coffee, he used the sink on the houseboat, and that sink was connected to the lake. And so he used lake water instead of pure water to make this coffee, and everyone got sick from it. And it's like, what the heck? Like, water is water, coffee is coffee. Like, it wasn't like a really gross coffee. Like, how did this cup of coffee, just by using water, how did this make everyone sick? See, in the water, there's this microscopic bacteria. And this little tiny bacteria was enough just to ruin everyone's week, everyone's day. Puke, poop, puke, poop at the same time. Just all from this tiny little bacteria. And it's the same thing with Jericho. No matter how big Jericho was, no matter how small they were, God knew that they had the potential to corrupt everyone. They had the potential to poison everyone. And it's the same thing with our sin, right? Jericho is like our sin. No matter how big our sin is, no matter how small it is, no matter how much it's going to hurt people, no matter how much we convince ourselves it's okay, it's so fine, even a little amount of sin, the size of a microscopic bacteria, is enough to poison you, is enough to corrupt you. is enough to pull you away from God and pull you away from God's plan. And I think all of us today, we have our own Jericho, right? We have our own sin that just lives comfortably in our back pocket that we kind of hide from everyone. Like we no longer feel guilty about it. We're just kind of comfortable. It's like, okay, it's not going to hurt anybody. It's fine, right? And that's your Jericho. And today I want to share with you guys 3 ways that we can conquer this Jericho and defeat it. Because no matter how small it is, it's still going to poison us. And real quick, I want to clarify that this sin isn't like normal sin, right? It's not like us tripping and falling or making a mistake. There's a difference between making a mistake and comfortably living with sin. I'm talking about the sin you're comfortable with, the sin that you don't feel guilty about, the sin that you're hiding from people, the sin that you think, it's fine if I just keep doing this. It's not the sin that you keep on messing up and go, oh, God, I don't want to do this again, and then we fall back. We're human, right? We're going to fail. I'm talking about the sin, the Jericho that hides in your back pocket that you are comfortable living with. So 3 ways that we can conquer our Jericho. You can conquer your Jericho, the sin that has the potential to corrupt you. The first way is this. Are you ready? Fight from victory, not for victory. Fight from victory, not for victory. We go to verse 2. Verse 2 in chapter 6, it says, Then the Lord said to Joshua, See, I have delivered, highlight, circle, underline, delivered. I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. He says, I have delivered. Not I will deliver. Not I'm going to deliver. Not, hey, when the time comes, I will deliver, right? He said, I have delivered. The battle's won. He's telling the Israelites, it's over. I've already won the victory for you. So the Israelites are now conquering Jericho. They're attacking Jericho, not for victory. They're not doing it so that they can win. They're doing it from victory. They're doing it knowing that God has already won. If we skip down to verse 4 it says, Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. Ram's horns. So back in the day, the Israelites had 2 horns. The first horn was a silver horn. The silver horn was like an alarm. It was like a charge, right? And then they'd run and start the war and conquer the city, right? It was them like telling the entire army to charge, to attack. Like when they're about to conquer a city, they blow that horn when everyone rushes. But they didn't blow that horn, they blew the ram's horn. The ram's horn is called a shofar. What it is it's a horn of celebration. It's a victory blast. It's what they blow when the war has been won. So they marched around the city blowing their celebration horns, right? I can't do a ram's horn. Anyone can do a good ram's horn? I imagine it's a little lower, right? Well, that'd be a cool horn. It's a celebration, right? It's a victory. Like, woo, we won, we did it. On their holidays, they would blow this ram's horn as a part of celebration. Like, this is crazy, right? Imagine you're one of the Jericho guards and you're looking down and watching these people walk around celebrating. It's like, hey, bud, you haven't even tried to conquer the wall yet. You're not going to get past our wall. It's either really funny or it's like really scary, right? Like, oh my gosh, these guys are really confident. They're already celebrating. And they haven't even started the war, and they're already saying they're going to win. Like, they must have a secret weapon, right? And it's the same thing for us today. We fight from victory, not for victory, because we have that secret weapon, right? We have the same God. Colossians chapter 2, verse 15 says this. It says, He took away the weapons of the powers and authorities. He made a public show of them. He won the battle over them by dying on the cross. Jesus won the battle over them by dying on the cross. See, Jesus has already defeated your Jericho. He's already defeated your sin. He's beaten death. He's already won us the victory. When Jesus was hanging up there on the cross, he took his last breath and he said, It is finished. It is finished. He said, it's done. It's over. I've defeated death. So now we can conquer our Jericho from victory. And now we can no longer be slaves to sin. Now we don't have to be slaves to sin anymore. That's our next fill-in. Now we don't have to be slaves to sin anymore. We don't have to be slaves to this world anymore because we're free, we're victorious, and now we can attack our Jericho knowing that God has already delivered it into our hands. The second way we can conquer our Jericho, are you guys ready for the next one? Is faithfully obey. Faithfully obey. Keyword, faithfully, right? That means even when it doesn't make sense. You guys think Joshua was like, okay, yeah, God, that sounds like a great military strategy. We're going to walk around them until they get dizzy and die. I love it. It's perfect. No, he was like, this is probably crazy. Like, we're going to walk around. I think it's so funny looking down on the Israelites walking around like, ooh, I'm so scared. You're going to do another circle around me. Please, no. Like, this isn't a very good military strategy, right? And Joshua, while he didn't say anything, I'm sure he was thinking that this was crazy, but what did he do? He followed it to a T. He did it because he trusted God. He trusted God. He trusted that God's way of doing things was better than his way. He trusted that God's way of doing things was better than his own way of doing things. Do you guys believe that? You guys believe that too? Do you believe that doing things God's way is better than your own? Do you believe that God's way of doing things is better than your own? Do you believe that doing your relationship with your parents God's way is better than your own? Do you believe that doing dating God's way is better than your own? Do you believe that doing your sexuality God's way is better than your own? Do you believe that who God says you are is better than who you say you are? Even when you don't understand it, even when you may not agree with it, do you believe that God's way of doing things is better than your own? Isaiah 55, 8 through 9 says this. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither your ways are my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than yours, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. See, God's way is better than your way. It's higher up. He's on a different level. God's way is better than my way. But do we believe that enough to give him every aspect of our life? Do we believe that enough to give him our tongues? Do we believe that enough to give him our identity? Do we believe that enough to give him our sexuality? Because when we believe that enough and we give him all of those aspects of our life, that's when God does amazing things. When we faithfully obey, God does amazing things. When we faithfully obey, God does amazing things. When we faithfully obey, God mends your relationship with your parents. When we faithfully obey, God protects you from shame and guilt. When we faithfully obey, God gives you worth and gives you value. When we faithfully obey, God restores you back to royalty. But it starts with what? It starts with first faithfully obeying. And our last point, our last way that we can conquer our Jericho is this. You guys ready? Number 3, don't return to your... Don't return to your vomit. Don't return to your vomit. You guys ever see your dog eat dinner and then go... Hold on. There you go. And then puke and then go, ooh, dessert. And just scarfs it all up. Isn't that gross? You guys don't do that? You guys don't eat dinner and then maybe like, and like a little cup set up by your bed stool for like a midnight snack? It's great. It's like, why go to the kitchen when I have my cup of... I'm just kidding. It's gross, right? It's wrong. Proverbs 26:11 says, as a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool repeats his foolishness. So when we conquer our Jericho, when we have that spiritual win, we don't have to return to it. We don't have to go back to it. We don't have to go back and give it life. We don't have to fall back into that trap because God has already given us victory over it. Don't leave it defeated. Don't go back to it. Give it new life. When we conquer Jericho, we can't go back and rebuild. When we conquer Jericho, We can't rebuild. If you jump down to verse 26, it says this. At that time, Joshua pronounced this solemn oath. Cursed before the Lord is the one who undertakes to rebuild this city, Jericho. At the cost of his firstborn son, he will lay its foundations. At the cost of his youngest, he will set up its gates. How often do we do this? How easy is it for us to fall back and rebuild and re-allow that sin to gain momentum and that sin to come back in our lives? And I know it's a lot easier said than done of leaving it there, leaving it defeated. But I think it's a lot easier said than done is because so often we rely on our own strength, right? Like, oh, I got this. I can do this. I have enough self-control to not go back to it. I have enough self-control not to return to that vomit. But do you guys know what the 9 spiritual gifts are? Anyone know what all the spiritual gifts for Starburst? Do you know it? Yes. Great job. Oh, watch out, Shara. Oh, I almost took Shara's head off. That's okay. She deserves it. Just kidding. She's the best. Shara's the best. I'm so sorry. Don't fire me. So, what was the last one? Anybody remember the last one? Yes. Self-control. Self-control is a fruit of what? The Spirit. Self-control is a fruit of the Spirit. It's not a fruit of DJ. It's not a fruit of Shara. It's not a fruit of Georgia. It's not a fruit of Caleb. It's a fruit of God. It's a fruit of the Spirit. That means it comes from God. Why do we think we need God to conquer our Jericho, but we don't need him to keep Jericho defeated? Right? We're like, God, I need you to come in. I need you to give me the strength. I need you to conquer this Jericho. And God's like, yes, let's go. Boom! Knocks it out, defeats Jericho. And they're like, okay, God, I got this. I got this. I can do it. And God's like, are you sure? Like, are you sure you can do it? Like, yeah, get out of here. Go, get out of here. I'm gonna take over. I have enough power. I have enough strength. I have enough self-control to keep Jericho defeated. But you don't. None of you have self-control. I don't have self-control. Because our self-control doesn't come from us. Our self-control comes from God. It comes from the Holy Spirit. And if we want to keep our Jericho conquered, if we want to keep it down, we can't have God get out of the way. We have to continue to rely on his strength. If he's going to conquer Jericho for us, we also need him to keep it conquered, to keep it defeated. And so I want you guys to ask yourself this. Hopefully by now you guys are like, yeah, I know what it is. Hopefully you've been thinking about what that Jericho is. But ask yourself, what's your Jericho? What's that sin in your life that you're comfortable with that has the potential to corrupt you and bring you away from God? And I wish this wasn't the case, but even having a little tiny sin that lives in your life, it's enough to separate you from the creator of the universe forever. It's a big deal. Sin is powerful, way more powerful than we ever give it credit for. And the enemy knows this. And the enemy will do whatever he can to convince you that, well, that sin's not a big deal. It's just small. It's not hurting anybody. Like, it's just between you. Like, it's all good. It's not a big deal. Do you guys know that rat poison is 99% bait? 99% rat food, 1% poison. That's it. 1% poison has enough to kill you. Guys, it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot to poison you. It doesn't take a lot to kill you. It doesn't take a lot to keep you from the creator of the universe, the one that knitted you in the womb, the one that knows every hair on your head. But here's the good news. The good news is we have a solution, right? The issue has already been resolved. The battle has already been won. When Jesus died on the cross, he defeated sin. He defeated death, so now that we can confidently fight our Jerichos. So as you guys leave here this morning, I want to encourage you. Fight your battle. Fight your sin. Conquer your Jericho, knowing that God has already won the battle for you. Let's pray. Lord, thank you so much for who you are. Thank you that you're not a God that says, hey, good luck. Good luck conquering that Jericho. Good luck taking down that fortress. But you're a God that says, I'll do it with you. Let me conquer it for you. Thank you for being a God that loves us so much to meet us where we're at, to give up your son so that we can spend eternity with you, and that death and sin no longer has a grip on us. Death and sin, we no longer have to be slaves to, but now we are free, we are victorious because of what you have done for us. God, we love you so, so much. And all of God's people said, amen.